The can opener is the second episode of the 4th season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Mackenzie, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. In general, really brilliant episode, but I do feel like it's unfinished. And maybe it's obvious and it isn't unfinished, but I'll talk about that when we get to the end. But otherwise, really brilliant episode. As I said, spoilers from now. It actually starts off with Robert coming over for coffee. Ray is then there and he sees that they're out of milk. And I do have a question about this, because he gets the milk carton out of the fridge. It's empty. Tosses it away. Debra goes and gets another milk carton out of the fridge. Ray didn't bother to look to see if there was another one. And she thrusts it into his chest and splashes milk everywhere. So that means she had opened that milk already. So why didn't she discard the empty milk carton? It was behind it. So clearly she had to have put the open milk back and leave the empty carton at the front. I might be overthinking it, but it's tiny details like that that show that maybe something needed a little bit more attention. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm just confused as to why Debra would have opened a milk carton, put it behind the other one, then put the empty milk carton back. I won't say any more about it, but it irritated me. And then in the next scene, Ray is actually over at Marie and Frank's. And he's talking about Debra and said, and I quote, "She went all nuts over a can opener." And we get the flashback to the previous night and what happened, but it's definitely not an accurate representation, which is kind of the point. I think the episode does a good job of showing that people perceive situations very differently. And what you remember happening may not actually happen. I guess it goes with the classic saying, there are 3 sides to every story, one person's side, the other person's side, and the truth. And I think it became very obvious that this was not accurate because Debra was behaving in a way that Debra wouldn't behave in. And Ray comes home from work. Debra had not made him dinner. This scene paints her as being very lazy, not really caring about him, not really interested in talking with him. And he gets this new can opener that Debra had bought. He tries to open this can of tuna. Tuna juice goes everywhere, and you can smell the scene. You can absolutely smell the tuna in this scene. I love the smell of tuna, but not when it's dripping out of the can. And we're then having Debra's flashback because Robert comes over to talk with her, and we have her flashback where Ray comes home from work. He's really grumpy, not interested in talking with her. She's very, very happy and smiley and very enthusiastic about her new can opener. A stark contrast from the previous scene. But it ultimately has the same conclusion with Ray spraying tuna juice everywhere and making a mess with the can opener. And I think it is an interesting way to display the fact that actually people's memories of the same situation, not necessarily always going to be the same. Ray then comes over, and this is in real time for the rest of the episode. Ray apologises, they both apologise, sorry for last night, end of story. And then Marie comes over and kind of stirs things up a bit. She comes over with a solution that will, and I quote, "fix everything." She comes over with a can opener. And Debra realises then that Ray hadn't really understood why she was upset about the can opener. And this is the bit that I don't think was ever properly fleshed out. Maybe it's so obvious that it didn't need to be, but I'm questioning whether my reading is correct. So I guess I'll explain what I mean by this now. I'm assuming that we're led to believe that Debra was upset about the can opener because Ray wasn't really happy with it and she'd made a decision with this purchase, and Ray was kind of criticising this decision to make this purchase for this can opener, and Debra was unhappy with the way he responded to it. That's kind of my reading of it, but we never get confirmation of that. And to be honest, I was waiting for the reveal. I was waiting for Debra to say the real reason I was upset about the can opener was because of this or that reason, and we never got that. So I actually feel like I was left hanging, and it feels a little bit underdeveloped. Again, maybe to everybody else it's really obvious what Debra meant, and it isn't to me, and if that's the case, fair enough, this is a me problem, but I do feel like I was waiting for something. I feel like when she said that, you don't really understand why I was really upset. We were giving a bit of suspense, and we were left hanging, but unfortunately we were eternally left hanging. So that was a little bit irritating. The rest of the scene plays out really beautifully. Robert then comes into the room. Frank is over as well. It's nice to have somebody on Debra's side. Obviously, Debra told Robert her side of the story, so he's on her side. Marie and Frank heard Ray's version of the story, so they are, as they probably always would be, at least with Marie, on Ray's side. And Ray and Debra do impressions of each other. I have to say, Ray's was pretty funny. Harsh, but funny. Robert points out it's never really about the can opener, which again, I was waiting for a further explanation about from Debra, and we never really got it. And maybe we're meant to piece together the bits of the puzzle ourselves, but that's not very satisfying when they're building this suspense. Frank and Marie then have this huge argument about a jar of fat. It's fantastically played out, but I don't like seeing them arguing. And Frank's outburst actually was pretty great. And he did kind of ruin it a little bit when he told Marie, I don't have to care, that's your job, about her cleaning and cooking and everything. And yeah, he kind of ruined the value of his outburst after that. But they leave, things seem fine now, and then we're in bed with Debra and Ray, and they both explain that actually they both feel like they take each other for granted. And maybe that's what Debra meant when she said the can opener was more than just a can opener, but that's not the message I got from those scenes. In those two flashback scenes, never did I perceive that it was about taking each other for granted. And I feel like that's reaching a little bit. Again, if other people see that very clearly, that's fine, but that's not my reading of those scenes. So if that is Debra saying that that's what it's really about, and Ray also saying that, then fair enough. But for me, it seems like there was something else there. So, I don't know. Maybe that's what it's ultimately about. But for me, I got something else out of those scenes, which may not be a bad thing. Having different readings of the same story is not a bad thing, but it just means that my experience with the episode maybe wasn't what the writers intended. Who knows? Either way, I can't say it's a bad episode. In fact, I think there are a lot of really strong moments in this. Personal highlights? Robert was brilliant, particularly when he came into the kitchen with the empty bottle of Pepto-Bismol, and everybody just looks at him, and he's kind of like a deer in headlights, and he asks, is this about me? As he often does. I rather liked that moment. I thought Robert had a great role to play in this. I thought the two flashback scenes were very well done. And just based on the way both characters generally behave, I think neither of those representations would actually be accurate. Which again, goes with the saying that there are three sides to every story. Two people's sides and then the truth. And I think I didn't enjoy watching Marie and Frank arguing because I don't like watching them argue, but I do think it was beautifully done, really great performances. I love how everything was framed. We have Frank and Marie at opposite sides of the table. Behind them we have Debra, Robert and Ray, and I just think visually it was absolutely stunning, really captivating. So a lot of really strong moments in this episode. If it's a message about taking people for granted, then that's not a bad thing at all. But as I said, that's not necessarily my reading of those two flashbacks, so it's not the conclusion that I had. But either way, really solid episode. The can opener is a really great episode of Everybody Loves Raymond.